Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Treadmill Talks. I am Coach Jason Today, I want to talk about a champion's mindset. Let's go. So, over the years, I have been blessed to have been able to meet and interview and have been coached by and mentored by a lot of champions, true leaders in every sense of the word. It's interesting to watch and learn from champions. I used to be a writer and an editorial director for a mixed martial arts magazine years ago. And I was able to interview a lot of the top MMA fighters at the time. Randy Couture, Bones Jones, George St Pierre, so on and so on. Vanderlei Silva, a lot of the champions. And what I realized was these guys, tough guys, you know, really strong, tough guys. They were humble for the most part. They were kind with their time. They were generous. They were incredibly hard workers. And that's one of the qualities that sets all of the champions and all of the leaders apart, in my opinion, and from the people that I've met and worked with and dealt with. True leaders and true champions have an incredible work ethic. They do, you know, some of them talk the talk, but they walk the walk. They work. They have an interesting mindset where they have big goals and big ambitions and big dreams, but they work. They just outwork everybody. I remember specifically working with George St Pierre, and George St Pierre at this time was unanimously the best fighter on the planet. He was a champion's champion in every way, shape, and form. And I was able to interview him a few times. One time, George St Pierre had lost his title to an unknown fighter, Matt Serra. I mean, he just basically came out of nowhere. I mean, he was a good fighter. I shouldn't say he was a good fighter, and he had won The Ultimate Fighter, which was a reality TV show, and he just sort of, the odds were extremely. I think they're like 100 to 1 that he would win the fight. He didn't have a chance, and won the title, because that's the thing about fighting. If one punch and it's over. So I was at the fight, the rematch in Montreal at the Bell Center, and I was invited backstage to do an interview with George St Pierre and Faraz Zahabi, his coach, which I did before the fight. Press stuff, and met with some of the other fighters and some of the other trainers and coaches and stuff. Typical stuff. And George St Pierre won the title back that night. Now, because I had already established a relationship with his coach, Faraz Zahabi, and the editor of the magazine was very good friends with Faraz Zahabi, I got an invite to be backstage in George St Pierre's locker room to greet him after the fight. Not as a writer, not as an editorial director, but as a friend and a fan. And I'm sitting in this room. Now remember this. I'm a guy from Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada, literally the middle of nowhere, in the grand scheme of things, you know, in that world. And I am at an event that was just watched by millions of people and witnessed the greatest fighter on the planet at the time win his title back. And I'm backstage, backstage, I guess you would call it, and he just won his fight, and I have a picture of it. You know, we're there, and there's me and there's his coach, Faraz Zahabi, and GSP, George St Pierre, and we are hugging. We're in an embrace, and get the picture. Here's the picture. And then they bring around the cognac. And what was interesting about that is I don't drink, and George St Pierre doesn't drink either, which was kind of interesting. But we did a cheer. They did a cheer for him, and there was the three of us. David Loiseau, who was his training partner / best friend, trained at the same camp. His mother, and his girlfriend at the time, and that's it. That's who was backstage after this fight. And you know, when I look back at that and I think to myself how that whole thing came to happen, it was because I had a mindset where I said to myself, I'm going to become a writer for mixed martial arts. And I used to go to the store, I used to go to Chapters. I don't think it was called Chapters at the time, maybe, whatever. I used to go to the magazine store and I would buy 2 or 3 mixed martial arts magazines every month. I was one of those guys. I had a mixed martial arts club. I'd been in martial arts for many years, and I was very interested in everything there was to learn, everything there was to learn about professional mixed martial arts. And so I would buy these magazines. And I remember thinking to myself, there wasn't a whole lot of Canadian content in these magazines, and at that time, there was a lot of really good up-and-coming Canadian fighters. And I thought there should be some Canadian content, and there should be somebody writing about the Canadian fighters. So I wrote to these magazines. I wrote letters to all the mixed martial arts magazines that I could find. The internet was just in its infancy at the time, but I did manage to find some addresses, and I wrote to them all and just would say something to the effect of that there were a lot of really good Canadian fighters. There's not a lot of Canadian content in these magazines. I think there should be something called it Canadian Corner, which was an idea that I got from a magazine, a bodybuilding magazine back in the day called Muscle Mag, where there was a section in the magazine every month called Canadian Corner for bodybuilders, and they would write about Canadian bodybuilding, what was going on in Canada with bodybuilders. But at this time, like I say, there was a lot of really good, in fact, some of the best in the world. So I wrote to these magazines, long story short, and I had been a writer. I didn't have any formal education in writing, but I had always loved writing because of my English teacher, Mr. Harris. I had a love for writing, and I had a love for the word, if you will, and grammar and things like that. And so I used to write for business newspapers, and I wrote a little book with my ex-wife, so I enjoyed writing, and I had some pretty good skills as a writer. So one of these companies reached out to me and asked me to send them in an article. They said, let's see what you got. Put your money where your mouth is, kind of thing. And instead of being scared and saying I have no business doing this, I decided to write the article. And the article was called something to the effect of the USA versus Canada, who has the best fighters. And I submitted the article and waited, not expecting anything. But about a month later, maybe a month and a half later, I received a check and a note from this magazine, a letter from this magazine, saying that they were going to publish my story. And so in the note there was a phone number, and said phone. So I called them and thanked them very much. And we went over the stuff, and they asked me for a little bio and picture of myself and all that kind of stuff for the magazine. Now, at the time, the magazine was in transition, and it was going from the United States, and it was being purchased by a company, by a gentleman in Quebec. And they needed somebody in Canada to be a writer. They wanted more contributing writers. So they asked me if I would write some more articles, and I did. And that eventually led to, the magazine eventually got bought out, and the editor of the magazine lived in Montreal, Canada, and she loved my writing. She loved the fact that I was kind of obsessed with MMA and knew pretty much everything about MMA. I had watched the first UFC ever and all of them in between, and I knew a thing or two about martial arts, having been in martial arts for 25 years. And she was impressed by all of that, and she was impressed with my writing. So the more articles I wrote, the more I got involved with the magazine. Eventually started writing about different types of fighting equipment and gear and things like that. And it led to me becoming the editorial director of the magazine. And one of the final, I was with the magazine for a while, and then it just became too much. I was flying to Las Vegas to cover the fights. I was flying all over the place to cover fights, and I had a full-time job and a side job, and then it was just a lot too much. And it wore me out, it wore me down, all the travel and all the stuff. And it wasn't, well, to be perfectly blunt, it didn't pay enough for the amount of work that I was putting into it, because all the time off and time away and all, it was fun, it was cool, and it was a great experience for a younger guy. But I did have a family at the time, and I did have bills to pay and all this stuff, so I had to focus more on my job instead of this kind of side gig. And the last magazine that I was a part of, when the magazine was called MMA Authority, I was the editorial director. I wrote or co-wrote or wrote pretty much 70% of the magazine. The articles would come in, the stories would come in from the fighters, and I would have to edit them and rewrite them, and I would have to do interviews with them. I was doing product reviews. I was doing, there was a lot. There was a lot. I was covering fights, covering fighters, and I was pretty proud because that magazine was one of their top-selling magazines, and it really turned into something pretty big. The magazine, I think it still exists today, but it was a fun gig. And what's interesting about that whole process is, in interviewing these champions, I learned about that mindset. I learned from fighters and from coaches about that mindset, the mindset of never, ever, ever giving up, never taking no for an answer. I'm a guy from Moncton, New Brunswick in Canada who became the editorial director of an international mixed martial arts magazine with zero education as a writer. I just was, I had some skills. I'd done some research. I'd done some studying on my own, of course. But I just had that gift, and I was self-aware enough, and it was something that I had a passion for, something that I loved so much, that it turned into a incredible life experience that very, very few people ever get to have. Because a lot of people say, how did that happen? Well, that's how that happened. It started with an interview with George St Pierre. And the respect and the humbleness and the kindness that he showed me, and Faraz Zahabi, his coach, who I ended up writing a couple articles with, it was just an incredible experience for me. And it taught me a valuable lesson. And as the years went by and have gone by, I've been lucky enough to have built relationships with people like Faraz Zahabi, who is considered one of the best MMA coaches in the history of MMA. I remember, back to my football days, my coaches back then taught me so much that I didn't even realize at the time, but I do now, about true leadership and never giving up. My wrestling coach, I remember that kind of, I remember those things very, very well. My martial arts instructors, I remember the leadership skills and qualities and the work ethic that you learn from martial arts and that you learn from sports, really went a long way for me. And I look at some of the leaders in business, like Ken Leblanc, the CEO of PropertyGuys.com. I mean, the guy is just a grinder. He's worked so hard that this company that he started in Moncton, New Brunswick, is now an international company and has changed the lives of thousands of people and helped thousands of people save hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. It's incredible. Grinder, hard worker, doesn't take no for an answer, focused. There's a lot of leadership qualities that are across the board when it comes to champions. I know some of the athletes, Corey Allmond, that I've been lucky enough to have a great relationship with the captain of the Moncton Magic basketball team. Just a grinder, just works and works and works. And when he has a bad game, and trust me, when he has a bad game, it's still better than most people's good game. But when he has a bad game, he is so hard on himself. He works and works and grinds and practices and gets up in the morning at Breakfast Club and does this thing. Grinders mentality, doesn't let the bad seep in. You know, they just gone through an incredible season, one of the best seasons in the club's history. They won the whole thing last year, and it's hard to repeat, but the team they had this year, it was pretty much, in my opinion, impossible for any other team to beat them 4 times in a row. They were on their way to another title. I don't think anybody can deny that, and the season, as everybody knows, stopped before they could get that second title. And you know, it's hard on all the guys, and Corey, it was hard on him too, very hard on him, because that was, you know, that's his dream. This is what they do for a living. They play basketball, and that's been taken away from them. But you know, he's a champion, and I know that he will rebound from this because he has that right mindset where he will continue to grind, continue to work hard during this time. He'll keep doing his exercises, he'll eat properly, he'll drink the water, and he'll be ready when this season, when everything comes back to life and starts again. And trust me, those guys are going to be very, very hungry for another title. So I feel bad for all the other teams because the Moncton Magic are coming back to win. I look at guys like Sadik Hadzovic. You know, this is a guy who is, by all accounts, one of the best bodybuilders on the planet. In just for a number of reasons, not just because he has an incredible body, because he is a true leader. You know, he took his skills, he took the things that he's learned, he took his life story and the reasons why he got into bodybuilding in the first place, and he's transformed it into a business that is helping change the lives of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people around the globe. And that is a true leader. Sadik doesn't take no for an answer. Sadik has no excuses. You know, we all have roadblocks, we all have ups and downs, and he does as well. But he is very self-aware, and that's another true character of a champion and of a leader, is self-awareness. He's so self-aware that he knows when he's in that cloud. And again, like I say, a lot of you, so this is a long, man, I can't do a short video anymore. There's a lot of people who are in a cloud and they don't realize they're in a cloud. Being self-aware, that is a true quality of a champion and of a leader. You know when your mind's in the cloud. You know when you've gone into the negativity. You know when you've gone into the negative zone, and you pivot and you adjust. As soon as you're there, you're aware that you're there. You say, okay, time to get up, time to do some cardio, time to brush this dust off, get rid of the negativity, get away from negative people. It's time to restart. And that is what Sadik does time and time and time again. He's a true leader in every sense of the word, and he inspired me to get back into this 100%, back into health and wellness and fitness personally, not professionally. You know, I've got a really great career right now with PropertyGuys.com as their head coach. But I sort of forgot about the health and wellness and fitness side of things, which was always my passion. It's who I am. And again, I have pretty good self-awareness, but it took a little push, a little nudge from Sadik to get me going again. And I want to thank him for that. But Sadik is a true champion, true leader in every sense of the word. Again, these qualities that leaders have and that champions have. They outwork everybody. They're hard workers. They have no excuses. They have focus. They stay focused. And they're very, very self-aware. There's a lot of other qualities, but those 4 are the main qualities that I have found in true champions, in true leaders. They're disciplined. That's another one that they are. They're definitely disciplined. So anyways, true champions share those qualities. If you don't have those qualities, guess what? You can work on them. It's like working out a muscle. You can build that up. Discipline, you know, a lot of people say, Jason, you have a lot of discipline. Yeah, it takes work. And it takes repetition and consistency. For me to get up here and do this morning cardio every day, I don't like this. I don't like cardio. I know there's some people that like cardio. Whatever. To each their own. There's also people who like to eat bat heads. I don't know, whatever. I'm not a fan of morning cardio, but I do it because I'm disciplined, but this takes work. It takes work. Discipline is not, I do have a good amount of discipline. I don't think people are born with discipline, I think discipline is something that's learned, and it's a skill like everything else, and you can get better at it. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So discipline is definitely another quality of a true leader, true champion. But you can all work at that stuff. But it starts with the water. So drink the water. You knew I was going to say that at some point during this video. Drink the water. Get up. Take care of yourself. Take care of your health, especially now more than ever. Sorry for this rant, this ramble, whatever this was today. I hope it brought a little bit of value. I hope my story helps motivate someone out there. The moral of the whole story is never give up on yourself. You can do amazing things. If I can do what I did, and that's just a tidbit of my story. If I can become the editorial director of an international mixed martial arts magazine from Moncton, New Brunswick, and sit backstage with George St Pierre after he won his title in the UFC, then you can do anything you want. Set your mind to it and do it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thank you for subscribing. Please like this video, hit the little bell, share this with other people, please. These stories come from my heart, and all I want to do, my mission in life, is to help as many people as I possibly can. And I hope these videos bring you a little bit of joy, bring you a little bit of wisdom, bring you a little bit of motivation. If I can help one person, then my job on earth has been done. Check out the links below. Subscribe to this channel. Buy the book. It's a good book. Grow through what you go through. And I thank you again, guys. And I will probably chat with you tomorrow. Take care.